and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome to the Bradbury Group, New Zealand's best weekly political argument, hosted by the militant, Marxist, anti-Santa, Martin Bradbury. The Bradbury Group is streamed live on Rover, Sky TV, YouTube and Facebook. Proudly sponsored by Wātea, journalism you can trust. Let the arguments begin.
Kia ora Aotearoa. The true demarcation of power in a late-stage capitalism, liberal, progressive democracy is the 1% richest plus their 9% enablers versus the 90% rest of us. Welcome to the Bradbury Group, New Zealand's best weekly political argument. I'm your host, the editor of the daily blog, Martin Bradbury. Bomber to my comrades, Mr. Bradbury if you're nasty. My pronouns are us and we. Coming up on this evening's show, the political panel all-stars tonight are National Party Cabinet Minister Chris Penk. The Penky is in the house. Labour Party MP for the mighty Manurewa, Arena Williams. New Zealand Herald columnist Shane DePoe. And Auckland Mayoralty candidate Kerrin Leoni. Tonight's 1-on-1 and 10 is NZCTU economist Craig Renney to discuss the economic crash. Will things get worse? Shout out to Kiwi Skirt and Chewy from BHN moderating tonight's YouTube page. Good evening to all the Bradbury Easters online watching right now. Your comments will appear on screen as we go. Shout out to our Wātea Facebook Rover and Sky TV whānau. And our Twitter panel this evening is Tim Selwyn. He'll be tweeting live online at Twitter, hashtag the Bradbury Group. Before all that, however, is this week's War on News. Brothers and sisters, let's talk penguins. The extraordinary crash in the economy we witnessed last week with GDP numbers far worse than anyone was predicting was actually predicted last year. In 2024, 15 independent union and university economists wrote to the government warning them that their economic strategy was putting the entire economy at risk, and they begged the Prime Minister and Finance Minister to change course because their direction was threatening our collective economic well-being. Right after that letter was sent in November, Chris Bishop proudly told media on tape that the Finance Minister would rather listen to penguins than the 15 independent union and university economists. Penguins, ladies and gentlemen. Penguins. Fast forward 10 months and everything those 15 independent union and university economists warned would happen to the economy, thanks to the policy direction of this government, has happened, which begs the following questions. 1. Where the fuck is this penguin? 2. Did the government actually base its economic decisions on a talking penguin? 3. Why did Chris Bishop decide of all the things the Prime Minister and Finance Minister should listen to before these 15 independent economists? What's a talking penguin? Look, I'm not suggesting this government is making economic decisions based on the advice of a magical talking penguin. Chris Bishop is the one suggesting that. What other talking birds are advising this government on policy? Because the Idea National Act and New Zealand First are making policy decisions based on talking birds actually explains a lot. As for Chris Bishop, Polly is a cracker. Talking of white people without rhythm, the Prime Minister's office today refused to release communications from his claim that Taylor Swift and her fiancé reached out to see if they could take up his breathless TikTok offer to hold their wedding in New Zealand. The PM's office declined a request to release these communications that would prove Luxon was being honest about this Taylor Swift boost because the communications referenced in the media reporting were sent and received by Luxon in his capacity as a private individual, as opposed to in his official capacity as Prime Minister. Which seems weird, because how would Taylor, Travis, or anyone else know who Chris Luxon was, let alone how he could get them a wedding in New Zealand? I suspect National's talking penguin has set up a wedding company side hustle in America because a talking penguin arranging bridal parties is more credible than the Prime Minister's Taylor Swift claims. And finally, in this week's War on News, research over the weekend warns the rapid climate change in Antarctica will see unprecedented environmental carnage, with the headline 10 feet of water coming. The research suggests vast damage to animals living in Antarctica, particularly emperor penguins who are feared will die out before the end of the century. That's once, twice, 3 times a penguin. Thank you, Chris Bishop. Brothers and sisters, we're all going to die on a burning planet thanks to the lies of the petro-industrial complex and their polluter mates. To quote the great warrior poet oracle Mike Hosking, happy days. The political panel all-stars up shortly, Whānau. But first, this week's one-on-one in 10 with NZCTU economist Craig Renney. Kia ora, comrade. Welcome to the show and thank you for being available to the Fourth Estate. Your democracy is grateful.
Thank you. I just want to put a quick plug in here to actually defend penguins. They are a sophisticated, urbane, well-dressed bird, known for working together for the common good, and they really passionately care about climate change. So none of these things are present in the current government's economic policy. So I just want to defend penguins here.
Craig, you are one of the 15 independent economists who wrote to the finance minister in November of last year begging her to change direction. Chris Bishop said the finance minister would prefer to listen to penguins. Do you feel vindicated? And is Chris Bishop basing policy decisions on a talking penguin?
It's difficult to say whether he's basing policy decisions on a talking penguin. It's certainly not basing it on evidence, and he's certainly not basing it by looking outside in his constituency at Hutt South, which, like the rest of Wellington, is suffering deeply from the economic policies that his government has put out. We've got unemployment at 5.2%, 400,000 New Zealanders want more work, can't get it. That's a record level. We have 2 million fewer hours worked than this time last year. And as we saw at the last GDP set of numbers, the economy basically fell off a cliff in June. And we saw a broad-based decline right across the economy. Everything from agriculture to science, technology, everything fell. We've got real challenges out there, and I just hope he's getting advice from somewhere, be it a talking penguin or somewhere else.
Finance Minister Nicola Willis blamed Donald Trump's April 2nd Liberation Day global tariff shock for the slump. John Key has blamed the Reserve Bank's slowness in cutting the OCR, and Chris Luxon has blamed the COVID spending by Labour. However, the abrupt halt in early 2024 to discretionary capital spending on housing, roading, hospital planning and school building shocked the construction, infrastructure and local government sector. It's the government's own policies that has triggered this collapse, isn't it?
Well, if you look at the construction sector, for example, the data from Stats NZ shows that construction is down 9.4% from this time last year. We've seen, according to the monthly employment indicator set, there are approximately 16,600 fewer people working in construction than there were at the election. We saw a loss in residential investment, 1.9% fall in residential investment, but also a big fall in the investment in plant, in equipment, in the other things that would be driving future economic activity. We also saw a fall in non-residential construction. So there are fewer factories, there are fewer hospitals, there are fewer other shops, those sorts of things. All of these things are telling you that not only is there going to be less economic activity now, but there's going to be less economic activity in the future, because these are the kinds of leading indicators that tell you that actually things, that there's not going to be any investment, which means there's no jobs. No jobs means no spending means no investment, and we go round and round this cycle.
The reason these austerity tactics by the government aren't working the way they did in 1991, 1999 and 2008 recessions is because private debt levels make it impossible for people to take on more debt. All Nicola's austerity program has done this time around is attempt to shift debt to people who can't afford any more debt. Your thoughts?
Well, anytime we see an economy where there's no engine of growth, right? It's the job of the government to step in and use its buying power, use its spending power to get the economy moving again, to help create jobs, to help create consumption. Because if for no other reason, there'll never be a better time or a cheaper time to build a hospital or to build a school. And you can bet your bottom dollar, in a country that has an infrastructure deficit of $104 billion, we need that infrastructure. So now is the time to be doing it. But instead, what we've done is we've taken away that engine of growth from the government. We've taken away that engine of growth from private consumption because people aren't going out and spending money because they're terrified about where their jobs are. So they're paying down debt. They're using falls in interest rates to pay down their mortgage faster because the government, having told everyone to rein it in for a bit, having told everyone that they need to slow down their spending, have guess what? They've slowed down their spending. They've taken away the confidence in the economy, and that lack of confidence is what we're seeing in the data here.
We have the ability to borrow a lot more public debt without any real damage to the economy. But what National have done by locking us into the debt straitjacket is to pretend that we can't borrow more while also cutting revenue. That is creating a structural deficit. Indeed, Dr. Eric Crampton from the New Zealand Initiative, hardly a card-carrying member of the Communist Party, has argued Nicola Willis has built in a structural deficit. At what point does the credit rating agencies take notice of this?
Well, they'll start to take notice of this, especially if the economy continues not to grow. Plan to get the economy moving again.
The government's growth mantra now rests on selling gold card visas to rich migrants in the hope of reinflating a speculative property bubble. Is that an economic vision or vacant hope held together by snot?
I think snot's too strong a phrase for the structural element that's holding this particular plan together. If we're selling visas, great, right? Fine, right? That's not a plan, right? We're currently losing a New Zealander every 7 minutes and 11 seconds, a New Zealand passport holder, right? It was 2-3 times that before COVID, right? We're losing them. We lose 73,400 people last year. So we can sell a few thousand visas, right? That's fine. But we're not making up for the fact that we lost Palmerston North last year.
Yeah.
Right? Now, we've got to say, well, what are the long run challenges in the New Zealand economy and how are we delivering growth in the long run? Good, well paid, sustainable jobs. We have an energy crisis in this country, which is driving manufacturing out of business. Manufacturing fell 3.5% last year. Manufacturing output is down at levels at 2012.
Wow.
Right? We are rapidly deindustrializing, and a big part of that is actually energy costs, and there is no energy plan. So we've got some big questions to ask. Flogging a few visas to some people who may otherwise, who have no other reason apart from they just want to use a passport, that's not a plan. That's just, you're hoping to import some more mates so that when the apocalypse turns up, you've got someone to turn to. It's, this isn't a future plan at all.
Doesn't this extraordinary economic meltdown demand more clarity in terms of what actually happened with the Reserve Bank fiasco? It looks like Orr was sacked for refusing to walk away from high capital requirements for the banks. But shouldn't we have greater guardrails for banks if the economy's on the skids?
It's certainly really important that the economy and investors in New Zealand have confidence in an independent Reserve Bank and that the Reserve Bank isn't just doing the bidding of the government. And that's really important, not just for one government. That's actually structurally important. That's something you don't want to get wrong, because if you lose credibility in that space, it takes a very long time to get that credibility back. And you're going to pay more in your debt interest. Not only the government, but mortgage holders are going to pay more in their debt interest if you lose that credibility, because lenders will demand higher rates if they don't believe that the Reserve Bank is going to keep inflation under control. That means that transparency is absolutely critical here. Who knew what and when, and making sure that the new Reserve Bank governor, whoever they are, who's announced tomorrow, will be able to be frank and fearlessly setting interest rates in response to the economic evidence that's in front of them, and hopefully doing so with a mandate that's about more than just inflation. It's about, as we had, how do we make sure we're keeping maximum sustainable employment and we're growing the economy? And if you want an example of a country that works really well, those are actually the three mandates of the Australian Reserve Bank, where inflation is lower, where the economy is growing by 1.8% a year, and unemployment is 4.2%. So it can work, but we should have some we should have much higher levels of confidence and transparency right now than possibly many people do in the Reserve Bank.
There has been an explosion of industrial action from teachers to doctors to nurses. You are with the Council of Trade Unions. Why is this government so hostile to workers and the state sector?
Well, when you're offering workers, people who are bringing their passion, their skills, their talent to their work, people who are looking after your children, people who are looking after you in hospital, your grandparents in hospital, and you're offering them below inflation pay rises, not just for 1 year, but you're offering them below inflation pay rises for 2 years, for 3 years, and you're saying, this is all you deserve. What is the message you're going to take away, right? There's a real risk here that we're buying a fight, not just with those groups, we're buying a fight with firefighters.
Yes.
We're buying a fight with a range of other public sector workers. We have to ask the question, what is the end game here for the government? What is it trying to achieve? Because in picking these fights, it's not as if it's actually working for inflation. Inflation is 3.2% if you take away petrol, and it's going up. Food pricing's 5%. For those of you who are following along at home who bought a white sliced loaf last year, white sliced bread went up 41.7%.
Jesus.
Right? There's a real risk here that we're buying a fight in a huge industrial dispute with a whole range of people, because the government cannot recognize that A, its economic strategy is not working, and B, its hope is that by keeping pay down for those groups, it'll keep pay down for other groups. So everybody who's a working person just has to take it on the chin, because the government's given away $23 billion in tax cuts over the past 2 budgets. So when the government says it doesn't have the money, it does. There's $23 billion of money it's given away over 2 budgets, and very likely some more at the next budget as a pre-election sweetener.
Finally, Craig, you warned the finance minister this would happen in November of last year. How much worse can this all get?
Well, we hope, and I genuinely hope this isn't, we can play politics with this, but let's hope it doesn't get worse, because this is real people's lives. This is real people's incomes, right? You just have to go to Tokoroa, right, where they've not only lost the Oji pulp and paper plant, they've now lost the Carter Holt Harvey plywood plant, right? Yeah. There are communities that are being really hurt by this. The top of the South Island, Nelson's seen multiple cuts to multiple factories, and we're seeing factories shut around the country almost on a weekly basis. So let's not hope it gets any worse. It will likely get better, but it'll get better mechanically, because it can't get worse. We can't keep falling at that same rate, because that would be a COVID level of fall in some industries. So hopefully it will get better. But when we see growth in the next quarter or the quarter afterwards, the number that you should keep in, and your viewers should keep in their head, is 0.9%. Because if growth is smaller in the next quarter than 0.9%, we're actually still behind where we were in March.
Right.
And in fact, until we grow more than 0.9%, we're actually still smaller than we were at the start of the year. We had a government that at the start of this year said this was the year of growth.
Yes.
And if you remember, we had the growth strategy, going for growth. We have an economy that is 1.3% smaller than at the election. This growth strategy is not working, and it's not delivering for New Zealanders.
Thank you, comrade. We look forward to speaking with you again soon. Okay, now to our political panel all-stars. Our first panellist is the lone voice of reason in an Auckland Mayoralty race that has her up against Wayne Brown, the Mr. Burns of Auckland politics. If there is a God, she will beat him. Auckland Mayoralty candidate Kerrin Leoni. Kia ora, comrade. Welcome back to the show. One word to describe the week, please.
Oh, I would say exciting.
Why?
Because we are now in that phase of getting our people out to vote. And even though voting numbers are low, I am fully excited that our people will eventually get there to getting out to vote. And we know there's a lot of people on the ground that are pushing for that to happen.
Preach.
I have to say, though, Mr. Wayne Brown, his poll of 50% doesn't look like it's working out for him. I mean, if it really was true, he'd have 180,000 votes by now, and the city doesn't even have 40,000 votes.
People really don't like him. People really do. He's got
That's
this terrible...
I've just come I'm from Milford. I might have
Yes.
lost a few votes, but hey, you come first. You come first. So
Amen.
I had to
Amen,
leave
sister.
Milford, but I said to
Amen,
them, I
sister.
gave my 5 minutes, and I said, well, I've got to go, guys. I'll be back for a cup of tea later, though.
There's far more votes on the show, trust me. Our next panellist is the best reason to buy a subscription to the Herald, political commentator, raconteur, and broadcaster for the people. New Zealand Herald columnist Shane DePoe. Kia ora, comrade.
Kia ora, kia ora, kia ora,
Welcome
koutou.
back to the show. One word to describe the week, please, sir.
Depressing. Unemployment 5.10, Māori unemployment 10.5, rural unemployment around about the 14%. Rangatahi, immeasurable actually. And what I know from
1 in 5 young
yes,
kid, right? You're 1 in 5 unemployed.
But what I know about these trends is once they set in, it takes generations to fix. We saw that in the 80s and we saw that in the 90s. You know, our relation, Shane Jones says, get the nephews off the couch. Actually, as a result of the actions of the government that he is part of, there are more people on the couch because their jobs simply do not exist.
Our third panellist hails from the mighty Manurewa, voted most likely to topple capitalism by her kindergarten, spokesperson for building and construction, spokesperson for commerce and consumer affairs, and spokesperson for youth. Labour Party MP for the Manurewa Massive, Arena Williams.
Kia ora,
comrade.
kia ora.
One word to describe the week, please, ma'am.
Collapse. We're seeing an economy that is collapsing on top of a building and construction sector on its knees. This is the biggest downturn for that sector since in a generation, with 17,000 jobs lost. There are 74,000 Kiwis gone in this year under this government, and there will be more because of that collapse in things like manufacturing down 3.5% and investment down 1.9% as well. We're going to see more pain, and the Reserve Bank is going to take that into account at its next rates.
And last, but certainly not least, there are only 2 reasons to vote for the National Party. The first is Jerry Brownlee because Jezza is a cultural tauanga. And the second reason is tonight's final panellist. If he were a soccer team, the club chant would be Penky, 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 Penky. Please welcome to the show National Party Minister for Building and Construction, Land Information, Small Businesses and Manufacturing and Veterans, as well as being the Associate Minister for Defence and Immigration, the Honourable Chris Penk. Kia ora, Penky. Welcome to the show. One word to describe the week, please, sir.
Good evening, Bomber and comrades. My one word is penguin, not to be confused with penguins. There's been a lot of talk about penguins. Penguin in my office is when we're mentioned by any media outlet other than the Bradbury Group. So had a good week. There's lots going on. I look forward to telling you all about it.
Brothers and sisters,
Not
let's
a black
get into
and white
tonight's
issue.
show. Issue 1, GDP crash. Where's the growth we were promised? Is it going to get worse? Issue 2, doctors, nurses and teachers striking. Has government lost control of work relations? And issue 3 tonight, why hasn't New Zealand recognised Palestine? Plus, we'll have a final word at the end of the show where each panellist gets to go to the mountaintop to see who breaches broadcasting standards this week. My money is on Chris Bishop's Talking Penguin. Comrades, the country was stunned last week as the GDP numbers came in far worse than the worst predictions. Turns out shutting down the infrastructure and borrowing $15 billion for tax cuts we couldn't afford wasn't the golden path to prosperity we were promised. Shane, watching the government scramble and announce new infrastructure pipelines is all well and good, but why did they destroy the infrastructure pipelines back in 2024?
Well, I'm not convinced they are new infrastructure pipelines.
That's
I
right.
think it was re-announcements of announcements that have already
A
been
rehash.
made. That's right. But also, here's the thing, my friend. When we talk about 74,000 people going, that's 210 people per day. It's the people that we need to build the infrastructure that are going. And why are they going? They're going for better paid jobs, greater stability, and a superannuation platform that not even the Tories in Australia stuff around with, unlike here in Aotearoa, New Zealand.
Follow-up question to that. Announcing these new plans is all very well and good, but who the bloody hell is going to build them? Because all of our tradies have gone to Australia. So who's going to build them?
That's right, but not even the wealthy have confidence in this government. Investor confidence is at an all-time low. So when the Associate Minister of Immigration, or the person who's like fifth in charge of the immigration policy in New Zealand, because Winston's really in charge of it, when they say that we're going to give these golden visas, all we're doing is selling passport. These people are not interested in investing in New Zealand. Zealand, because if they were, investment confidence would be on the rise. It's not, man. It's going south, and going south big time.
Kerrin, Auckland infrastructure problems are a microcosm of what we are seeing across the country. Why are we so shit at building anything anymore?
Look, one of the big things that I've been campaigning on is the fact that we are so behind in our infrastructure. When you look at water care, we've got our 10-year plan to bring that all up to date. And I think a lot of people are really looking forward to the debate that's going to happen in council chambers tomorrow around intensification. Now, how can we achieve intensification when central government has not given us any money to actually focus on that?
Right.
And so, that whole debate is going to happen tomorrow. We don't have the schools that are going to be ready for, these big 700 apartment buildings. I mean, in Avondale, we've got that issue. We're going to have a huge apartment building come up, and we know that the schools are already full. So, look, what I'm saying is that put your money where the mouth is. If you actually want to make sure we've got the infrastructure, invest some money back into Auckland, we need that money from central government, and we deserve it. 15% on GST. It should be coming straight back into our pockets.
Follow-up question. The Auckland economy is hemorrhaging. Unemployment national is 5.2, but it's 6.1 in Auckland and 11.5% for Māori in Auckland. Why does the national government hate Auckland so much?
I'm not sure if it's that they hate them. I just think it's disappointing. As I've just raised before, if we want to get our country moving in the economy, it's got to start in Auckland. And the fact that they've looked at putting some money into events, that's nothing. We need a huge investment to come into Auckland to pick things back up and get everything moving for our city. And you're right, people are leaving our country by the truckloads. And if that continues to happen with all of our key workers, what are we going to have left? And as has been mentioned, we've got the highest rate of unemployment now, which is shocking. And I have to say, it starts with our leadership. Our current mayor is saying nothing about solutions in terms of working with central government on that.
Right.
And there's just no hope that's been provided to Aucklanders about getting our city out of it, working with central government to move things forward. And that's why I hope people vote for me for this year's election.
Preach. Chris, your work on opening up building materials from the monopolies is one of the few good, genuine things this government has done. But surely the claims of blaming Labour, the Reserve Bank and Trump's tariffs rather than the economic policy directions your government has embarked upon come across as passing the buck rather than taking responsibility. And voters punish that, don't they?
I think it's really a history lesson and an economics lesson, to be honest. It amuses me to hear your previous guest, Craig Renney, talking about how the government needs to stimulate the economy and spend our way back into surplus. I'm not quite sure that's the right way around. I know he's, what you would describe as an independent union economist, but I think it's an oxymoron, really. And we're copying the pain of the decisions made, over the previous 6 years. And they didn't get everything wrong, but they got enough wrong that we're now having to deal with it and try and clean up the mess. So this is just the consequence.
Follow-up question. Penky, we was promised growth from your Prime Minister, and the only things that have grown are the unemployment rate and people queuing up for the departure lounge. Those green shoots of economic recovery look more like dried snot, don't they? When are things going to get better?
Well, there was 0.8% growth in the first quarter, 0.9% decline in the second. So it's pretty much a wash for the first half of the year. In the third quarter, where we are now, bearing in mind, again, a history lesson, we're sort of, well in the rearview mirror for those times. Things are better, but they're a bit patchy, yes. And I'm not going to, insult the intelligence of your audience or gaslight them by pretending everything in the garden is rosy. It's not. But no one ever said that it would be immediately that we could turn things around. But we do have a plan, and it's not just as Craig claimed only on the basis of the active Investor Plus regime, although that's, a not insignificant part of getting some more
Chris,
foreign dollars.
Can I ask a question? Name two areas where things are getting better, show demonstratively better. Name two areas, two industries where they're getting better. Mining industry, which you guys are very good friends with. Fishing industries going south. We've seen a major fishing plant in Nelson close down. Tell me, where is it getting better right now?
I'll tell you, I mean, for one, the defence forces on whom we rely for disaster relief, humanitarian work, search and rescue, as well as all the military functions. I mean, they've had a defence capability plan, which says that this government, contrary to successive previous governments, yes, including blue as well as red, is actually finally taking seriously the things that they need to do to keep us all safe. Another would be law and order, demonstrably in terms of the statistics, things are looking better in terms of youth and other, violent and other forms of crime. So there's a couple for starters, and I look forward to discussing many more.
Arena, this government's agenda has been an unmitigated economic and social disaster. Sorry, Penky. So the 200 Kiwis fleeing the country every single day, and the government's solution is more mass immigration. I put to you that many voters who voted in this government didn't read the fine print and are now feeling buyer's remorse. When are voters going to forgive Labour, and when are you going to give some real policy alternatives?
Well, we saw Labour spending that year after the election really listening, and especially listening to Aucklanders about what went wrong there, because there are some parts of the economy that are going well under this government. Things like supermarkets and banks are still doing well, even though National at the election time talked a big game about their monopolies. And yeah, look, there are in the electricity sector plenty of people who are still doing well at the expense of other sectors in our economy, like manufacturing, which is really hurting Auckland when places like South Auckland are a manufacturing hub for the rest of the country. We are seeing this government's agenda playing out, where they know where the pain is, they know where the chokeholds are, like in the building and construction sector, where for a long time the inputs have been too expensive and have driven up costs. They name it, but they are not dealing with the underlying causes of that monopoly power, and there is not enough real action on the cost of living.
Follow-up question. People's hero Barbara Edmonds has been putting the fire to Nicola Willis over what the bloody hell actually happened at the Reserve Bank. With this level of economic meltdown, doesn't understanding why or quit and how quickly was thrown under a bus more important than ever before?
Yeah, it's a good question, and politicians should be careful to comment on the workings of the Reserve Bank, but we can see from its last monetary policy decision that the Monetary Policy Committee itself had to probably take a vote on, that basis cut point that we saw. This actual outcome is twice as bad as what most banks were predicting, and 3 times as bad as what the RBNZ was saying. We need to make sure that people can be assured in New Zealand that we have an independent Reserve Bank, that there is not political interference, and that the next Reserve Governor will have that level of independence. They need that before taking on this role. And so that fire that Barbara Edmonds has been pushing is really important to an institution in our economy and to the rule of law.
Shane, if you look at the growth predictions, they are pitiful. What happens if things get worse economically?
Well, it will hurt those that are already feeling the poverty, and it always does, doesn't it? It always, when times are good, it's the provinces that are last on the bus. It's the ones that are first off the economic bus. Chris has talked about, and I think the National has done some good things in terms of the crime space. But here is the reality: if you want crime to increase, you have increased unemployment, you have indentured and indebted policy that lasts for generations. So I think there will be some improvement for people at the top end, but for most New Zealanders, and particularly those New Zealanders that are already hurting, it's only going to get a lot worse.
Kerrin, when Auckland dies economically, the country dies. What does Auckland need right now that isn't mass immigration that has caused all the infrastructure gridlock to begin with?
Well, of course I have to start off by saying it needs a new mayor.
Preach. It does. It really does.
But look, I think in terms of the economy, it is really about us holding an economic forum and getting those key stakeholders together to have a plan to move forward. Because right now, when you look at the rates of homelessness in our city, that has more than doubled. And that's affecting the economy too, because it's affecting businesses and nothing is being done about that. There's been huge cuts. We actually had a presentation today from Helen from the Auckland City Mission.
Oh, she's amazing.
She is amazing.
She just,
so good.
She just puts it on the line, eh? An amazing human being.
Yes, and so all of that advocacy that she has set out, and that's our role as Auckland Council, we need to be leading all of those conversations and really thinking about how that impacts the economy. I mean, that's just one part, but we need obviously more jobs. I'm campaigning on getting more young people into work, with giving them work experience and getting them onto that, getting them onto the jobs and employment ladder, because right now, as soon as they finish uni, they're leaving.
Yeah.
Because there's nowhere for them to go.
Chris, isn't it true that a Chris Penk-led National Party would gain so much popular support that the National Party would storm to power in the 2026 election without requiring support from ACT or New Zealand First? Isn't that true?
Oh, better not do that.
No, that's not true. It's not true. It's not even a question. I did know at the start of the program you're having a go at Christopher Luxon and then Christopher Bishop, and I thought, I know how this evening's going to go, but third time's not a charm. I'm happy where I am. I enjoy the work I do under Prime Minister Luxon, making New Zealand back on track. I was going to say great again.
Yes. Adina, how will selling $5 million mansions to rich overseas buyers going to help anyone other than the rich pricks who own $5 million mansions? I mean, don't get me wrong. Yay, rich pricks and their $5 million mansions.
I think I get you wrong.
But how does that help the rest of us?
Well, it doesn't. I'm glad that I thought you were going to make me chant Pinky, Pinky, Pinky.
Hey, I don't have to make people chant it. Everyone wants to chant it.
Look, this government knows that that is not a solution to its woes. We've had two national ministers, Willis and Bishop, both saying that house prices need to come down. We've had the Prime Minister saying they need to go up. This will create inflationary pressure at the top end of the market for house prices. It will make Auckland houses worth more at a time where there is not an underlying economic engine driving any of that growth. It is inflationary, it is bad for house prices, it is bad for the rest of us who don't own them, but it is good for a wee slice of the crust at the top.
Yay. Quick round. Unemployment is 5.2. Where will it be at the end of the year? Kerrin?
Look, I have to be realistic at the moment. It's just sounding like it's only going to get worse, because I'm not hearing anything about how we can improve that. So I'm really, really concerned.
Shane?
Well, the fundamentals aren't being fixed. Energy prices are going up. That means our manufacturing industry is going to continue to hurt. And I think unemployment's going to go close to 6%. But I just want to say this, that when we talk about those raw numbers, and I say it time and time again, they're exacerbated in the regions amongst our young, and they get to a certain point where they become generational. I don't think we've reached that point yet, but we're not far off. Tim Selwyn, our blogger friend from Opotiki, he will tell you 2 years ago, most of his relations were in work. Most of my relations were in work. They're not now, folks.
Adina?
It will continue to get more uneven. If you're a woman, if you are young, if you are Māori, if you are Pacific, that gap will get worse. We need a government pursuing active labour market policies and making it easier for people to get into work. Things like the apprenticeship boost, which the government promised to keep at the election campaign and then have halved. Those are policies which get unemployment down and down in a sustainable way and grow a pipeline for those things that we need, like infrastructure builds.
Penky, unemployment 5.2. Where's it going to be at the end of the year?
Well, predictions are a fool's game. Luckily, I'm prepared to make one. Look, I think it'll be similar, to be honest. Obviously, we'd love it to be lower, and for all the reasons that Shane's quite rightly outlined, it becomes a massive social problem. The minute it becomes an economic problem, including and especially for the likes of the regions. I think, we're in a difficult time where we're sort of bumping along the bottom in terms of the growth and the recovery. So if things aren't worse, that's probably not a bad result for New Zealand Inc. And obviously we want to get the unemployment down and the employment up as soon as we can, leading into the end of this year and into next year.
Comrades, we need to move on to issue 2 tonight, and there's the staggering meltdown in industrial relations with doctors, teachers and nurses all going on strike. Kerrin, the heroes in our society are teachers, nurses, doctors, firefighters, ambulance drivers, public servants, those who forego the benefits of the private system for the public good. Why does National hate the public good so much?
Oh, that's a big one. that's a big one. But look, it's disappointing. I mean, I was on the march on the weekend for
Preach.
women's pay equity, and I just can't believe how far we are going backwards in terms of this country. These people are holding our country up. They're doing the most important jobs for our society, and they need to be recognised for that. So, yeah, I think we need to just keep pushing back, and we need to make sure that we are providing the best pay possible for all of these people in these roles. It's horrendous.
Follow-up question. Is the public on the side of the doctors, teachers and nurses or the government?
Wow. I think at the moment it's just, I'm so just really, I can't believe right now that government is so far back as we are. And yeah, I'm just saying I'm fully disappointed in where we're at as a country.
Chris, the outgoing NZCTU President Richard Wagstaff told media he's never been able to meet the Prime Minister or the Finance Minister, and the relationship with Brooke Van Velden is about as friendly as Donald Trump at a lesbian folk festival. We get that National hates unionists, communists and people with a reading age over 10, but why the open hostility to workers' rights and conditions?
Well, I don't think it's a fair characterisation, but I genuinely don't know the answer. But I would say if you look at some of the mischievous ads, and I'm being kind here, that the CTU ran Christopher Luxon and the National Party in particular, and frankly outright disingenuous before the election, then I'd be surprised if they would expect to be on any Christmas card lists. But they're able to make any public statements, comments like anyone else. So good luck to them. But I don't think they should fool themselves that the average New Zealander thinks they're acting in good faith. I half agree with what Councillor Leoni said. It's the doctors and nurses and teachers that are holding up this country, as in elevating it, but who's holding it up in the sense of delaying it and stopping progress is the unions, and they should look in the mirror before they have a go at others for not wasting their time meeting with it.
Follow-up question. Would a Chris Penk-led National Party storming to popular power in the 2026 election sit down and break bread with the unionists?
I mean, in general terms, I like to engage with people, but I would like to think that if I were to do that in good faith, then that would be, reciprocated across the table. So I'd have to make an assessment, I suppose, whether someone seeking to discuss issues with me was actually seeking to discuss issues or was trying to make some sort of political point for the purpose of scoring in a partisan kind of manner, or, for the collective good, actually, try and thrash out some issues.
Arena, if we can't pay the same as Australia for our public servants, why not make the conditions better with bonded education, 4-day working weeks and better accommodation? Why have we left it all to the free market?
Yeah, it's a good point, and we need to be making sure that those public servants, teachers, nurses, the people who are on strike right now, are treated with dignity and respect in our society. I find it funny that Minister Penk is, talking about how hard it is for National to sit down and meet with those unions when National are very happy to meet alongside lobbyists for the banks, for large corporate organisations.
Coal, they love coal.
Yeah, look, these are people who are representing those people on the front line who are looking after our kids.
Oh, they love tobacco.
All of that stuff. Yeah. They're looking after our kids. They're the care and support workers who are looking after our elderly. These are people who are organising for those conditions that they need. And we've thrown a lot of numbers around on this show about GDP, but one number that I want your listeners to remember tonight is the government sets the pay for a number of different people in the sector. Yeah. And for those teachers, they were offered a 1% pay rise at the same time as the government offered board directors that it employs an 80% pay rise. Remember the difference that what we are saying as a government of New Zealand to those people who sit around the board table versus those nurses who go to work every day to change people's lives. And these people are both public servants, but the value of their work, in this government's eyes, is very different.
Shane, how outrageous was it of Simeon Brown to attack nurses and doctors for neglecting their patients?
Yeah, first of all, Chris tries to make a difference between doctors, nurses and their unions. The reality is they're democratic institutions, and it's the doctors and nurses that make the decision in terms of industrial action. And, they don't take that lightly.
No.
It's highly unusual to have the level of activity that we've got now. Look, the reality is that we have a weak-kneed Prime Minister who's not in charge of industrial relations in New Zealand, actors, who is not in charge of the economic direction of this government, actors, they fundamentally believe that a deregulated labour market and economy will deliver for most of New Zealanders. What we know is that simply is not true. The converse is true.
Quick round to everyone. Is it time for unions to gain the legal right to strike across all sectors? Comrade?
Should I say yes?
Have to.
That's what I'm looking for. Arena?
Yeah, right to strike is something that is in the political consciousness
Yeah.
again, because we
Right.
have had politicians in this term really challenging that with, say, what Judith Collins has been doing. It should be a fundamental right for workers to be able to use that strike action. It should also be important for Parliament to oversee some of those sectors like defence,
Yeah.
because these are people in charge of tanks. We should be careful about our democratic recourse for strikes in that situation.
Shane, is it time to gain the right for nationwide industry sector strikes?
Well, there are very few things that we have self-sovereignty over, and one of them is our labour, and we should be in a position where we can offer it and we can withdraw it, and striking is a fundamental right in that respect.
Chris Penk?
Yeah, I mean, you can do what you like, but you don't get to escape the consequences of that. I think that's really what we're talking about. We're not talking about, well, just to be blunt, slavery. So it's obviously got to be a balance. There are workers' rights, which everyone would, I expect and hope, would want to see upheld. But at the same time, we've got to have the ability for society to function, including in the public sector, but in the private too. So I just sort of am a bit wary, including when you get the highly politicised motivation, seemingly in terms of industrial action. I mean, a lot of fine talk from Arana about pay increases offered. Well, there was a pay freeze, public sector pay freeze during the last government. And yes, they're going to say, well, it's COVID, but I mean, it's not as though inflation wasn't rampant at that time. So, let's have a bit of consistency is my view, and then we can judge the good faith intentions of those who are taking action.
Comrades, we need to move on to issue 3 tonight, and that is New Zealand's unbelievable foot dragging over recognising Palestine. Australia, the UK and Canada all Monday recognised Palestine, but New Zealand didn't. Chris, critics, not me, Penky, not me, but critics will argue that David Seymour has built an illegal settlement on the Prime Minister's balls and called that an independent foreign policy. History is watching. Should New Zealand be ashamed for being held back by ACT on this issue?
Well, history may be watching, but it's also trying to get the mental image out of its head right now. I think it's a serious issue that deserves serious consideration. It can't be just sloganeering or dogma on either side of the argument. I mean, we've made clear as a government that our long-standing position is that of the New Zealand government across successive regimes and administrations, which is a two-state solution. Winston Peters being the foreign minister, as opposed to some random junior minister sitting in Auckland, which would be me, will be speaking to the United Nations soon, and you'll hear more from him then about our position. Sorry, I can't be much more helpful than that right now.
Arena, this is what ACT MP Simon Court said on social media. Direct quote. Saying you care while waving a flag and chanting for ethnic cleansing isn't really that caring. Playing tarot dress up on weekend, go to work Monday feeling smug about the protest, not realising that most Kiwis they work with don't actually share their emotional anti-Semitism. How on earth is that a response to the war crimes that we're seeing being committed in Gaza right now?
Well, that is a terrible view to put on social media for anyone who is an elected representative in the New Zealand Parliament, and I'm surprised he said that, because I agree with what Chris Penk has said. This is an issue which demands serious attention by New Zealand politicians, just like all politicians around the world, where this is an unfolding genocide which is causing deaths and starvation of children, of people who are in territory which is under assault by a neighbouring state. This is a serious issue. New Zealand has dragged its feet on this, and it is really difficult to watch this now playing out on the world stage where New Zealanders don't know what our foreign minister is going to say. But it calls on all of us to think soberly about our comments, and that is not anything I agree with in that post.
Shane, recognising Palestine is the least we can do. It is symbolic and merely shames Israel. But we aren't even capable of doing the very least. Should we be ashamed of the silence on what the UN has called genocide?
That's right. But also, all due respect, Martin, I don't think it is just symbolic. It actually means that we give the people of Palestine a voice, that we can talk to them and that they can talk to us. So they don't have that at the moment. The reality is we are out of step with most of our the countries that we have a moral equivalence with.
right.
Yep.
The UK, Australia,
Canada.
most of Europe, Canada,
Yeah.
not so much the USA. I wonder whether this is just sort of ass-kissing exercise to Trump in a forlorn hope, because he won't, that he's going to give us some sort of a break on trade. If that is the reason, it ain't going to happen, folks.
Kerrin, they say Vietnam was the first war broadcast into our living rooms. The war crimes in Gaza are the first to be broadcast into our primary schools. The TikTok generation are watching what Israel is doing to children that look like them. Even if Israel wins this terrible war, haven't they destroyed their reputation with the next generation?
Oh, look, it's shocking what's coming out. But I just want to take a moment to acknowledge the 20,000 Aucklanders that marched over the Harbour Bridge. You know, that was a huge effort by Aucklanders to show that we should be putting the pressure on central government to take a stance on this. Then, in addition to that, every single Saturday, there's huge gatherings from Aucklanders. Again, I'm going to put it out there, the mayor hasn't been down to any of those.
No,
He's
no,
just
no,
the
no.
invisible mayor. No one sees him, and there's no leadership from that stance. So, I mean, I've been down there a number of times, and I can say from Auckland's perspective, there is a huge support to try and push central government in the direction that we should be. And as the biggest city, I think I've been proud of the stance that's been had. And we're also getting emails from a lot of Aucklanders that are making decisions on how they're voting.
Right.
Yeah.
Quick round. Will New Zealand be damned by history for our foot dragging on this issue? Shame.
I think we were once proud in terms of leading the way. You know, Nelson Mandela told us all when he came to New Zealand, I think in 95, 96, that we played a major role in the downfall of apartheid. And if we don't move quickly, and if we lose step with those contemporaries I've told about, I think we will be damned by our history. Not so much the people of New Zealand, but certainly this government.
Arana.
Yes, New Zealand should be proud of its record of independent foreign policy and leadership on moral issues like this on the world stage. We can be proud of our anti-war stance and our nuclear-free stance. Those are things that are in our blood as New Zealanders. I'm lucky to have grown up in that country. I want to see it continue for many more generations.
Penky.
No, of course not.
Kerrin.
Yeah, no, I agree with all the comments that have been said about that. I mean, you look at our history and what we fought for, this should definitely be at the front and centre of us pushing back as well.
Comrades, we need to wrap the show with a final word. Shame that your final word this week, please.
Minister Penk, get your government, your coalition government, to think twice about value statements for immigrants. First of all, two things. It creates a them and us mentality. And secondly, I think the last thing any government ought to be doing, whether you're libertarian, whether you're a socialist, whether you're right or whether you're left, and that is dictating what values should be for any sector of our society, whether they be the newest New Zealanders or tangata whenua. I'm very concerned about the imposition of value statements for migrants. What's next? Value statements for you and I and people in this room?
Kerrin, your final word this week, please, ma'am.
My final word every week is get out and vote. You
Preach.
know, yeah, we have just the lowest voter turnout numbers right now are abysmal. I mean, I'm still saying I'm excited because obviously the numbers that Wayne said he was going to achieve haven't been achieved. So that gives me an opportunity to get some of those votes. But at the same time, you know, we really need to make sure Aucklanders have their say on who they want to lead the city and all of the councillors and local board members. So exercise your right to vote, everyone. Do your research. We're going to be out all weekend having a lot more events so that people can come out and meet me because we haven't been able to do that through the debates from our invisible mayor. So I'll be getting out and doing the best I can across the city to meet Aucklanders.
Good luck. Arena?
Yeah, similar to that. I think it's a good time time for us to think about how our democracy needs some care. And not only voter turnout being low in these local body elections, but also thinking about how, this is a central government that made big promises at the election about addressing the cost of living. And it talked up its Prime Minister's business background, but it has failed on its economic record. Those promises are important to our democracies. We need to see delivery from this government on those things which are really important to New Zealanders. Those things like how much the weekly shopping bill is costing and power bills going up and up, insurance is going up and up, ordinary costs for ordinary New Zealanders that they cannot avoid, that they are being lumped with and being made to take on more private debt. It's not working for us. We need to have faith that this is a government that is focused on what really matters, but instead it's making it worse.
Chris Penk, your final word this week, please, sir.
Yeah, well, I mean, thanks for the conversation, team, and clearly I was quite taken with that point that Shane makes. Like, it'd been an interesting exercise to draft such a set of values. That's all I'll say. But I would just echo the others' commitment to local democracy. We've got this precious thing, and we can be really pessimistic or optimistic about ourselves as a country, and we can, wash that across a whole heap of issues that we've been talking about tonight. Obviously, it's in my craven political interest to talk up the optimism, not the pessimism.
I might have your vote.
And you hope as a country and as a society. I was trying to be positive, Kerrin. So,
not deluded.
Hey, standing as an independent.
Thank you, comrades. And now to my final word. Brothers and sisters, today, the President of the United States, Donald Trump, claimed paracetamol causes autism. This is the same Donald Trump who suggested injecting bleach would kill COVID. What does it say about how far off the rails American society has come when an unhinged president starts giving quack medical advice on issues as serious to people as autism? I have always believed that the deep suspicion of vaccines and promotion of magical crystals curing cancer-type snake oil medicines connect to America's deeply unequal private healthcare system that dooms most Americans into lives of debt for medicines they can't afford. Trump is manipulating the righteous anger of the poor who can't afford healthcare to promote utter bullshit on people's health issues that should only be given by actual doctors. Because of social media hate algorithms, these vaccine conspiracies and quack holistic cure-alls spread like COVID at an unvaccinated Republican gun show. The solution is free public health using the best medical advice. It is not manipulations of fear and ignorance to those too poor to see a doctor. Of all the cruel things Trump has done, telling those with autism that it's been created by paracetamol has to be one of his most unhinged. In solidarity, the revolution continues. Ka pai Aotearoa.
The Bradbury Group, New Zealand's best weekly political argument. The Bradbury Group is an independent podcast through the Rover Network, sponsored by Wātea News. After the show,